This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC. Streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of these important programs, especially these days with so much happening in the world and with the markets and the economy. Stocks did end mostly higher to kick off the new week as the market tried to rebound from the worst week we've seen in months as the post-election rally took a breather, and we await NVIDIA's third-quarter earnings report coming out on Wednesday. The Dow did slip at the closing bell, down 55 points. The S&P 500 gained 23, and the NASDAQ managed a closing gain of 112 points. We saw Bitcoin hit record highs over the past couple of weeks, still above 90,000. We'll be taking a closer look at Bitcoin and the cryptos later this hour with NATALIE BRUNELL, host of the Coin Stories podcast. President-elect Trump says he's naming former Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy as his nominee to be the transportation secretary. That's the latest announcement on the cabinet coming together. Duffy's a former reality TV star, was one of President Trump's most visible defenders on cable news. He served in the House for nearly 9 years, was a member of the Financial Services Committee, and was chair of the subcommittee on insurance and housing. Kevin Warsh, meanwhile, a former Fed governor who served at the Fed from 2006 to 2011, now seen as having a 40% chance of becoming incoming President Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary. According to the Polymarket prediction market getting attention today, Warsh jumped ahead of his nearest competitors, Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick, who, according to that prediction market, had a 29% chance, and hedge fund manager Scott Bessent, whose likelihood was put at 22%. Those numbers change quite a bit. Oil futures, meanwhile, settling at the highest in more than a week. This after, as you heard at the top of the hour, President Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles to strike deeper into Russia, contributing to a more than 3% rise in prices. The price of oil today, oil right now hovering just below $69 a barrel in New York, and in London has moved above $73 a barrel. The Global X Uranium ETF, which invests in shares of companies involved in uranium mining, has moved higher by about 5% today. On geopolitics this afternoon, I'll be speaking live later this hour with Gordon Chang, China expert, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of numerous books. His latest is Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Taking a look at what else is happening, President Trump plans to attend Elon Musk's SpaceX launch tomorrow. That's going to be a big deal. And we see Tesla stock popping on a report that President Trump wants to relax U.S. self-driving rules. Tesla going into overdrive on that report today. Joining us live now is top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken is also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1 and 2, soon to be Investment Atlas 3, also a Forbes magazine contributor. And he's also the host of Winning with Winans here on 790 KBC, which airs at 6 o'clock every Monday evening. Ken Winans, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, Frank, thank you very much. And you know what? You just rattled off a lot of news, and there's a lot of other good news that generally shows that the trends on November and December, the quintessential Santa Claus rally, as we've often heard it called, is probably still alive and well. And I know there was a lot of talk about the volatility in the market last week. I mean, the S&P 500 pulled back a whopping 2% off of its all-time high. So, again, I would just say this is a market to be looking at buying the dips. But, you know, Frank, the beauty about as we're having the new administration coming together, it's interesting to see how various stock groups are moving and repositioning themselves. And again, I think that it's safe to say that the rally's intact, as I just said, but I think the players involved in driving it forward are probably going to change, or at least change jockey position going into 2025.
On the air live with money manager Ken Winans. And Ken, you also watch the cryptos closely. Hard to ignore the big run-up we've seen in Bitcoin to a record high, still above 90,000. You're about 90,500 as we speak. Ethereum has also seen quite a rebound here following the election. And Doge, of course, we hear that word, that acronym, more often than not these days. Doge, of course, the famous meme coin, now 37 cents. Remember, it was about 6 cents earlier this year. What are your thoughts about the crypto world here?
Frank, I'm a technician, so I look at everything by trends, price trends, and certainly just momentum. And if I forget whether it's Bitcoin or it's another commodity or it's a stock, looking at this chart right now, Bitcoin had a major breakout past what we would call a resistance area, which whether or not anybody believes in it or not, let me tell you, the machines do. All this AI things that we keep hearing about and the quantitative modeling that's been around forever, these breakouts on big volume is very important. And according to my math, right now, you're not going to hit resistance, another big resistance point, until about 114,000. So what I'm trying to say is the trend in Bitcoin is up, and there is still room to go for people who are optimistic about it. Anybody who's a naysayer on it, I would say, well, look, you're quite a ways from the 20-week moving average, which is what I think is important. But again, trend is your friend, and you need to follow that. Ethereum has a very similar bullish pattern. But yeah, I would say 114 is where I would be looking for the next, stopping point.
All right, now a lot of discussion about who might be the next Treasury Secretary. Any thoughts on that? And how do you see this cabinet coming together and what's obviously going to be a pro-business and pro-market administration here?
Well, it's interesting about the Treasury Secretary because for anybody who's been back to Washington, they need to understand just how important it is that money and the presidency, the Treasury building is literally next door to the White House, more so than any other cabinet position. So the Treasury Secretary is an incredibly important position. And I would have to say that this person particularly is going to have a tough job because you clearly have the situation with the debts, the continuing deficits. You have the relationship between the incoming President Trump and Jerome Powell, and somebody's going to have to mitigate this and get it to all work towards the same solution. But no, it's a very, very important position. And I would just say that, for me, I've been asked quite a bit. None of the cabinet picks are a big surprise. President Trump wants people who have been loyal to him, have stuck with him through thick and thin, and they themselves are tough. And the thing that I personally like, the situation on the government efficiency plan with his two top business picks, you got to love it if you're a pro-business, free market person. This is where we see this whole thing going. I think it's going to be very positive going into next year.
On the air live with Ken Winans, obviously Elon Musk and President Trump very close, and looks like President Trump will be at that rocket launch tomorrow. That massive rocket that's set to go off. The SpaceX has been on a roll lately with, several launches just over the past day or so. It's been remarkable, the volume of launches. And Tesla stock getting a pop today on a report that President Trump may want to relax U.S. self-driving rules and may have a national standard for self-driving vehicles. What are your thoughts about what's happening on Tesla and also SpaceX? May be a publicly traded company at some point. We see on the front page of the Financial Times, Musk's wealth to hit new heights as deals fire up as SpaceX and XAI, his AI company.
Well, you know what? We talk about optimism. There's been so much pessimism, as you and I have been covering for many, many years. And when you see that this president is one of his chief advisors is one of the true technological geniuses of any time in our nation's history, it's going to be interesting to see who they pick to be the next NASA administrator, because I think we could see a lot of very exciting things happening in space exploration, the new technologies. We talk about artificial intelligence. Imagine marrying AI with space travel, Frank. These are mind-blowing type things. You take on top of it a lot of these other transformative type of things, certainly the crypto world, looking at how crypto, and in my last Forbes article, I mentioned just a thought that with California's financial troubles, maybe itself could have a crypto coin that could help alleviate some of its budgetary problems. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time as we look at the next 4 to 5 years and see where all this goes. Obviously, I'm an optimist. Obviously, I think there's a lot of things going on. But the fact that you have the market moving the way it is tells you trend is your friend. This is not a market to overly politicize, but this is a market that's in the right direction, and I think it will continue moving that way. Now, I would just keep this one caveat in mind, that, we are still seeing some bad news coming out. I've seen a couple of stocks that were at some lofty valuations that absolutely got mauled in the last week or so. It's not going to be straight up, and I would just tell the audience, if you have any stocks that have been lagging all year, they've lagged this rally, you need to get together with your advisors. I don't care whether it's a stock, an ETF. I don't care who the CEO of the company is. If it is lagging this, you really need to think about getting rid of it, because I don't know what it's going to take to move it. And while we're on that, the other piece of news that I really would caution everybody, or at least take note of, is the really good news that came out today about the home builders. They're the most optimistic they have been in almost a year, Frank. Again, that's more optimism that's going to drive things. Maybe the housing crisis will finally come to an end and buyers will return in the spring. But again, I'm seeing more good news than bad when it comes to the United States economy.
On the air live with money manager Ken Winans. And Ken, in all this, we saw gold and silver get a pop today. All of a sudden, gold is back above $2,600 an ounce at $2,616 here as we speak. Silver is back above $31 an ounce. Obviously, a lot of geopolitical concerns, which we'll be talking more about here later this hour. But what are your thoughts about this latest move in gold and silver prices?
As a historian, I'm always intrigued to see that the old guard somehow still have a role, even in this modern crypto-driven AI world. And gold and silver, by the way, are still playing that role. Now, I know a lot of people made a big to-do about gold pulling back. Again, it pulled back a whopping 7% off of its all-time high. These are normal type of pullbacks. It's healthy. It's normal. Nothing I would worry about. But where it gets interesting with gold is as you look at the situation going on around the world, and that there is this block of countries that are not necessarily champions of America's resurgence. And there is continuing talk about these central banks buying more and more gold to add to their reserves. We'll see how that plays out. But at this point in time, the trend on gold is still up. The trend on silver is still up. I would say that, again, trend is your friend. You want to buy into any kind of dips. And I still, historically and seasonally, gold and silver usually have very good runs during the holidays for gift reasons, and also just going into, for a lot of different reasons around the world, it usually has strong runs right up through February. So again, looking for various reasons to step into gold, it's not a bad play right now.
On the air live with Ken Winans, and we'll continue the conversation this evening at 6 o'clock on Winning with Winans. But at this point, Ken Winans, let me ask you the big question here that we ask here on Mottek On Money, and that is, where are you putting money now and or taking it off the table?
I'm going to say, well, number one, let's start with taking it off the table. I think anybody who's been following this global asset allocated investment strategy where they're buying foreign ETFs, I really think they need to take a good hard look at where this administration is going to go on targeting things. They've turned out to not particularly be good commodity substitutes. I would rather buy the commodities themselves. So I would take a good look at that. But I'm telling you, I like these real estate type plays on how they're playing out right now, Frank. And I don't know the last time you ever had anybody talk about a REIT, but take a good look at some of these REITs that had been beaten up for quite a while. And I know that it's a little shocking when you think about why would anybody want to step in and buy a commercial REIT? Well, don't forget who's entering the White House. And he is a real estate guy through and through. A name that I'll throw out right now is Vernado, V-N-O. One thing that I believe is going to come out of this administration in Washington, D.C. especially, you're going to go back to work, meaning this home work experiment in the federal government. I think President Trump's going to say, no, you're all going to start heading back into buildings. A lot of companies are expecting it too. I would just take a good look at that. I would say also take a look at Alexander's, ALX. It's another REIT that it hasn't moved yet, but it has a nice dividend. I just think that group will move. And then I'm going to reassert my call on the home builders, Lennar, Pulte. I would take, just take a good look at these guys. I think that now that people are used to higher than what they were used to mortgage rates, I think the buyers are going to be coming back next year into new homes, and I would certainly look at the home builders.
REITs you mentioned, those are real estate investment trusts, so thanks for that. And also home builder confidence, as you mentioned, at a 7-month high in the month of November, according to the latest survey that came out today. So you're right, that is certainly very significant. And, of course, President Trump knows real estate very well. Commercial real estate has been struggling in recent years. Any thoughts about what might happen under President Trump with commercial real estate? And some say it's already bottomed out here in the Los Angeles area. What do you see ahead for commercial real estate?
Well, I do think there's going to be, and again, as you just said, Frank, there's a bottoming out in a lot of that. But I will say this. I think that as I have learned since I moved to Nevada, a state line matters. It really does. We don't think about it, but it does. And I think that in the case of commercial real estate, you really want to look at where are the properties owned. And I think if you are in, for lack of a better term, a red state, I think you're going to find that those opportunities will probably be a little bit better than they are in a blue state. And until you at least find out how much of a shift is happening on being realistic about helping these owners get things back. But I just think that anything in real estate right now has been mauled for so long. I just think that it would not surprise me to see with a real estate president and a real estate administration that some of these players come back to life. Hey, Frank, real quick, I just want to bring up, the whole situation with Spirit Airlines and its bankruptcy. Yep. One thing I'm hearing a lot of right now, there's real concern about how the holiday season is going to play out this year, and especially with a major player now in Chapter 11. I'm just hearing it repeatedly. You better get your reservations in early, and you better not wait, that it might get real interesting this holiday season. And I'm hearing that, especially in Las Vegas, where a lot of people like to come for the holidays. You got to be a little careful right now.
Right. One of the big players there in Vegas. The stock is at $1 rate, I guess no longer trading right. So with Spirit Airlines filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, first thing this morning, certainly very, very big news. That, of course, was a big budget carrier filing for bankruptcy protection after mounting losses and merger deals that did not happen. So thanks for pointing that out, Ken. We appreciate it and look forward to speaking with you at 6 o'clock this evening. That is Ken Winans, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Also host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday evening at 6 o'clock right here on 790 KBC. Ken, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later then.
All right, Frank. Take care.
Thanks very much. And out to the freeways now here on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future for you and your family. Stop worrying about your retirement and the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with real physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534. And he'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Again, that number is 1-800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Spirit Airlines filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy today, allowing it to restructure and reduce some of its debts under this prearranged deal with bondholders. Spirit Airlines has received another $300 million in debtor-in-possession financing, which will allow Spirit to continue operating while it completes the restructuring. Spirit passengers can continue to fly and book with the carrier throughout the bankruptcy process. According to a statement from the company, the Chapter 11 process is expected to be completed by the first quarter of 2025. Shares of Spirit fell about 6% in pre-market trading today after closing at $1.08 per share on Friday. That stock is down 94% year to date. The stock market posting a mixed finish to kick off the new week, coming off a rough week last week. Following that post-election rally to record highs, the Dow down 55 points today to 43,390. The S&P 500 gained 23 at 5,894, and the NASDAQ up 112 points at 18,792. The yield in the 10-year note has slipped to about a two-week low at 4.42%. Shares of Palantir moved down to about 450 at 61 and change. We see gold right now above 2,600 at 2,616.50, up nearly $2 right now. Silver up 2 cents at 31.25, popping back above $31 an ounce during the trading day today. Crude oil futures on the upswing as well, with oil in New York just below $69 a barrel. And in London, Brent crude, the global benchmark, just above $73 a barrel now. Geopolitical concerns heating up once again. Wild ride for the cryptos. Bitcoin down about 1,000 now, back to 90,522. Ethereum up to about 60 now, at 3,216. And Doge at 37 cents. And now the latest news here on 790 KABC. Here on 790 KABC, good afternoon. A lot going on in the crypto world these days after President Trump pledged he's going to be the crypto president, and looks like a lot of action happening at the moment. Bitcoin recently hit a record high. The other cryptos have come along for the ride. We're watching what's happening today. The largest of the Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, according to NASDAQ, says that looks like it's going to start trading possibly as early as tomorrow. Also, we're watching the latest news here. Donald Trump's social media company in advanced talks to buy Bakkt. That's BAKKT, a cryptocurrency trading platform owned by Intercontinental Exchange, according to the Financial Times. And also, President Trump is scheduled to meet privately with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong and expected to discuss future appointments. That, according to the Wall Street Journal. Bitcoin hit record highs over the past couple of weeks following the election, presidential election, with President Trump victorious. And we see a Bitcoin still above $90,000 as we speak. Let's bring in now the crypto expert here, NATALIE Brunell, host of the Coin Stories podcast. NATALIE, great to have you with us here this afternoon.
Great to be here. Thank you so much. What a difference an election makes.
Right. You're right about that. And it's been a while since we've chatted behind a live microphone, so it's great to reconnect with you. Give us your reaction to the epic news here with Bitcoin hitting record highs and a lot of attention these days focused on the crypto world.
Well, it's hard not to be bullish when you're a big Bitcoiner because we have been thawing out of a very, very cold crypto winter. And finally, I'm getting all these messages from people I haven't heard from for years asking me if it's too late to get into Bitcoin. So something's clearly stirring. And as I mentioned, the election, the outcome has made a big difference because for the very first time in American history, we're going to have a president that is pro-Bitcoin, who on his campaign trail not just made promises, but called out one digital currency, one digital asset in particular, and that was Bitcoin. The fact that we have both the incoming president and Senator Lummis and others in the incoming administration saying that we're going to now create a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve, I mean, that's monumental. That's landmark. And the plan, if the Bitcoin Act goes through, would be to purchase 1 million Bitcoin. And that could start happening as soon as the first 100 days that Trump goes into office. So again, very hard not to be bullish if you're a Bitcoiner, but I do want to emphasize that it's still very, very early. We're at the launching pad, and the best is yet to come when it comes to the asset.
Refresh my memory. I know you track Bitcoin very closely. Do you track the other coins as well?
I do not. I mean, I follow the space very closely, but I don't invest in other cryptocurrencies because I see Bitcoin as digital property, as the one that's truly decentralized, as the digital commodity, whereas I see the rest of the broader industry, because it is not truly decentralized, as mainly an industry of digital equities. It's very hard, as you know, even if you track just the stock market, it's hard to know very much about any given company. And each of these protocols is very, very different. You have meme coins popping up, right? And they soar up 1,000, 100,000%, and then they crash back down. It's very hard to track an industry that has 20,000 or more cryptocurrencies and new ones popping up every single day, which is why I think with this new administration, we're going to get so much more clarity when it comes to broader crypto and digital assets. The vision is that we're going to have a framework, a rules of the road. What is a digital currency? What's a digital security? What rules do these companies have to follow? What do they need to disclose? Because what these companies are saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, they're basically saying that in the 21st century, why can't we trade things 24/7? Why can't we self-custody shares of a company, a security globally? Why can't someone own a security from a company in the U.S. in a developing nation if they can? And so these questions need to be answered by the regulators. They need to come in and say, well, this defines a digital security. This defines a commodity. Here's how to do this in a compliant way. And hopefully the future means that it doesn't cost $40 million to take a company public, and maybe you can issue some of these tokens in an ethical way. But again, I see crypto as digital equities and securities, a lot of new technologies with big ambitions, and I see Bitcoin as being the future strategic reserve asset for nations and the best way to store value for individuals, companies, and governments.
All right, and let me get back to something that was in Barron's this afternoon. Options trading will begin tomorrow on the $42 billion iShares Bitcoin Trust IBIT, the largest of the Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, according to a NASDAQ spokesperson confirming to Barron's this afternoon. The move offering a new way to trade, hedge, and speculate on the cryptocurrency. So right now with the risk-on environment, any thoughts about this latest offering here?
Sure. Well, the ETFs, the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, it has been nothing short of historic. The volumes that we're seeing, the amount of Bitcoin, the assets held under management by companies like BlackRock, it blew away all expectations. The analysts that follow this space very closely, I have them on my show if anyone wants to check it out, they forecast that the Bitcoin ETFs will soon be bigger, 3 times bigger than gold ETFs. So it's just been amazing to see this. And obviously with options getting the green light, we're just going to see even more liquidity. We're going to see more investors coming into the space. I think it's really it just goes to show that this asset class is now legitimate, and it is massive, and it is growing very, very quickly. And I think knowing that we're going to have this pro-Bitcoin administration, we're going to see a lot more volume in 2025.
Right, and the report from the Wall Street Journal this afternoon says President Trump, set to meet with the Coinbase CEO and expected to discuss future appointments. Any insights on what could be happening there?
Well, the only thing I know is that companies within this space, both Bitcoin and crypto, they have been pounding on the table and pounding on the doors of politicians, people campaigning, the people who are in office saying, hey, let's talk about this. We need to have a path forward. We want America to lead in this technology, in innovation. We want these companies to flourish. So overall, I zoom out and I think this is a very good thing, because Trump is taking his campaign promises seriously. And that's something you really want to see. A lot of people voted in this election one way or another, just wanting to see change, wanting to see action. And I think for those who are passionate about Bitcoin, they are very encouraged by the positive moves that we've seen so far.
Anything else that's on your radar screen? The miners, the crypto miners also have seen a pretty big run up lately. Any thoughts on that space?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the innovation that's happening within the Bitcoin mining space. I have partnered with BitDeer on my podcast, and they're going to be releasing some new technology, including their own miner, their own chip. So that's really interesting to see, because a lot of these companies are taking the time. They're investing capital in research and development to innovate. They're also doing partnerships with governments, like in Bhutan. BitDeer has partnered with the government in Bhutan to leverage their hydropower in order to mine Bitcoin. And now Bhutan is one of the leading sovereign nations that own Bitcoin. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think, again, Bitcoin mining, we're going to see it spread all over the world, chasing that cheap energy, which is largely renewable. It's largely going after that stranded, wasted energy. And that's one of the things that makes me so passionate, because a misconception is, oh, Bitcoin uses too much energy. Well, actually, if you peel back the layers, you learn that Bitcoin actually allows for more energy infrastructure, and it saves us energy, and it captures wasted and stranded and flared energy. So I'm really excited about the innovation happening in that space as well.
All right, and El Salvador placed a big bet on Bitcoin, which as it turns out is paying off at this time, certainly, with Bitcoin recently hitting record highs. I'm sure you've followed that epic story where Bitcoin includes El Salvador includes Bitcoin as one of its currencies, right? Tell us how that has played out.
Yeah, I had the chance to visit El Salvador 2 years ago. This is such a bold move. They are led by Nayib Bukele, who is a millennial. He is a president who has done his homework, and he thinks that one way to create a prosperous future for his country is by adopting Bitcoin and helping the people of his country adopt Bitcoin. It was very inspiring to see the people that I met there really no longer feeling a sense of despair that they have to leave, that they have to try to come to the United States to have hope, that they can actually create circular economies like the one that I witnessed in El Dante, which is based on Bitcoin. That's really exciting to see. And I think that he's setting an example, especially for currencies that are further downstream from the US dollar. I think that some people have to ask themselves, why are so many of these nations still developing? What is blocking them from being able to develop, to flourish, to prosper? And I think that Nayib Bukele asked himself that question, and he took the Bitcoin solution and tool very, very seriously. And I think that experiment is paying off. And when Bitcoin goes to six figures, it just goes to show what a small nation can do to its economy when they adopt Bitcoin.
Natalie, exciting times ahead. Look forward to many more conversations here on Bitcoin and the whole works. Natalie Brunell, host of the Coin Stories podcast. Thanks very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And out to the freeways we go now, 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Geopolitical concerns heating up today after President Biden authorized Ukraine's military to use American-provided long-range missiles on targets inside Russian territory. According to various sources, the president's decision, President Biden's decision, that is, was spurred by the Russian decision to invite 10,000 North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms into the fight against Ukraine in Kursk. It's unclear if President Biden plans to approve the use of the missiles outside of the Kursk region. We're following those developments very closely. Also, China's leader Xi Jinping outlining his 4 red lines to President Biden over the weekend at a big summit, the APEC Economics Leaders Meeting in Lima, Peru. Let's bring in Gordon Chang, China expert, author of numerous books, including the latest book, which we're going to talk more about as well. And we appreciate your taking the call here, Gordon Chang. First of all, your reaction to this epic news here regarding President Biden's decision to allow the use of long-range American missiles to possibly strike inside of Russia and possibly hitting North Korean troops in the process.
President Biden actually had to do something because the Russians were escalating by bringing in the North Korean troops. So far, they brought in 4 combat brigades, which is about 12,800 of their best special operators. But we have to see where this is going. China right now is looking very closely at the West's reaction to what Russia is doing. And if we falter, the Chinese will be emboldened. So clearly, this is a good move because it shows that the United States is not being intimidated by Putin's threats.
All right, and over the weekend, President Biden and the Chinese leader did meet at that APEC Economics Leaders Meeting. The photo had the Chinese leader front and center. President Biden was in the background. What were some of the big takeaways of that big meeting?
Well, China right now is using that photograph to show the world that the United States is in terminal decline. Got to remember that President Xi was standing in the place of honor to the right of the host, the Peruvian president, where Biden was in the back row in the corner. This was a failure of the State Department to negotiate Biden's place in the group photo. And it was Biden's failure to accept that place because when he saw that he was going to be disrespected, he just should have refused to take part in the photograph. With regard to his meeting with Xi Jinping, the Chinese said, as you pointed out, the 4 red lines. There was really nothing new there except that the 4 red lines did not include China's territorial claims to the South China Sea, which is an indication that the Chinese are on a charm offensive.
All right, and the Chinese leader went on to say that those red lines must not be challenged. Of course, this is coming just 2 months before a president like Donald Trump takes office. So interesting that he's laying down these red lines. Taiwan is one of those four, right? Probably the most sensitive issue between the U.S. and China at this point. What do we need to know about that?
Yeah, China always says that Taiwan is a red line, and they know what we're doing, and they fail to back up their warnings. What's been really interesting, Frank, is that for almost all of this month, China has been uncharacteristically quiet in its peripheral seas and air, and that includes Taiwan. And I think that's because they want to give the new president a wide berth. They're afraid of his unpredictability. They're afraid of what he might do. So yes, the Chinese will try to intimidate President Biden, but it's really not going to work because, as we all know, there'll be somebody new in the Oval Office on January 20th of next year.
And already we've heard that Senator Marco Rubio of Florida will be President Trump's pick for Secretary of State. He's also taken a hard line on China, right, as well as Cuba and other areas around the world. What's your reaction to that appointment?
I'm very happy that President Trump said he'll nominate Marco Rubio. He is a China hawk. What is interesting is that the Wall Street Journal is reporting that China was actually relieved that Rubio was appointed because they were afraid of Mike Pompeo, who also is a hawk, who has been very effective in dealing with China. I think with Senator Rubio, they're thinking, well, at least he's new. Maybe they can work on him. I don't think the Chinese would be right if they thought that because especially with the National Security Advisor pick, Michael Waltz, you have two people who have taken a very dim view of what China's been doing around the world and what it's been doing to the United States.
On the air live with Gordon Chang, China expert, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, and as I mentioned, author of numerous books. Your latest book, Gordon Chang, is Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Let's take a moment here to talk about that book and tell us what you have there.
I was concerned that our political class, our political leaders, do not understand China's fundamental assault on our country. And so I detailed what China has been saying about us and what China has been doing. The Chinese have declared the U.S. to be their enemy. They did that in May 2019 with a landmark editorial in People's Daily, the most authoritative publication in China. And we Americans have ignored it. But in Communist Party thought, a people's war is a total war. And so we ignore this at our peril.
A lot of buzz on X, formerly known as Twitter. And, of course, you're very active on X at Gordon G. Chang. And things are really heating up around the world once again with the missile announcement by President Biden. And, of course, the North Koreans in the mix there, too. And what is your assessment here of the world temperature at the moment?
The world temperature, actually, apart from East Asia, is very hot right now. And a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't be allowing Ukraine to fire missiles into Russia. The point is that President Biden was intimidated in early 2022. Putin saw that, and so therefore he pressed the attack on Ukraine.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here. Again, his latest book is Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon Chang on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang, Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang.
Best-selling author and business growth expert Candy Valentino brings her unique spin on achieving financial freedom.
More than 70% of people feel some sense of imposter syndrome in their life.
So that when feelings of fraudulency arise, remind yourself of who you are. Make sure that you recognize and celebrate small milestones. Practicing this will really shift your focus from seeking perfection to really acknowledging progress.
The Candy Valentino Podcast, wherever you listen.